5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 56 of Rank and Review. In this episode, your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons and his guest Lee Beckman are going to look at 6 zombie movies for this installment of Rank and Review, which I am calling Of the Dead 2, Romeros' Children. So I hope you guys aren't sick of zombies. I know we've had quite a bit of zombies the last little while, and I hope you guys can forgive me because I'm a little bit under the weather. So if I'm a little sniffly and I've got a little bit of rawness in my throat, I hope you can put up with that. As usual, you will find spoilers and coarse language throughout this episode, but I think we're all grown-ups here and I think we can just move past it. If you'd like to send me feedback, you can do that by sending your information or ideas or feedback of any kind to rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. Also, check out the website at rankandreview.ca. And please do tell a friend about the show or find us on Facebook or iTunes. Without further ado, please enjoy Of the Dead Part 2, Romeros' Children. Okay, welcome to the next greatest episode of Rank and Review. And I'm going to start out by apologizing. I am sick. So if I sound sick, that is why.
Excuses.
I am breathing fairly clearly out of at least one side of my nose. But I feel like I've got that tear in my lungs, and we're gonna do what we can to get through this. But
I have faith.
We're gonna fight through it.
I have faith.
This is part 2 of the Dead Rank and Review special, series of zombie-related episodes.
Insert Rocky music now.
Yeah, and I'm going to call this one Romeros' Children. So, what we're going to look at is the 3 remakes of the first 3 Romero movies.
Yes.
Well, the originals of which we discussed last episode.
Yes.
So, Tom Savini's take on Night of the Living Dead.
Yes.
Zack Snyder's take on Dawn of the Dead.
Little funky, yes.
And your friend and mine, from the director we talked about from Friday the 13th, part 2 and 3.
Yes.
Steve Miner, thank you. I almost had to lift up the case.
I'm disappointed.
For Day of the Dead.
Yep.
So there hasn't been a remake of Land as of yet, so I thought an interesting way to go instead of this would be the first 3 of the Return of the Living Dead series. Or the 3 valid Return of the Living Dead movies, as far as I'm concerned.
You've already said too much.
Return of the Living Dead Part 1, Return of the Living Dead Part 2, and Return of the Living Dead Part 3. And just in case there's a nerd out there who wants to inform me that Return of the Living Dead Necropolis and Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave do exist, I know they exist. They're directed by the guy who did 8-Legged Freaks, and they're abysmal, and they don't follow the rules of the franchise. And I don't think I'm going to make time for them. And I've made time for some pretty bad movies.
So there you go.
So there it is. That's my 2-sentence review of those Return of the Living Dead movies.
Do you feel better?
I do and I don't.
Okay.
It's weird to feel so possessive and passionate and nerdy about movies as openly ridiculous as these.
Yes.
But as good and bad as some of these movies are, I do feel like I have some love for them.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's where I come in as a hardcore fan. We just finished the Romero-thon, so we know that you like the zombies. How do you feel about like the Return of the Living Dead franchise or about remakes in general?
You can do a good remake. In fact, one of the remakes is actually quite good that we'll talk about. Well, two of them actually are pretty well decent. So remakes are fine. What was the other question?
What do you feel about the Return of the Living Dead franchise?
I, on the whole, feel very passionately positive about the Return of the Living Dead franchise, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So
I refer to it as Romero's children because
I think the kids are doing all right. To quote another movie,
basically he and his producing partner of Night of the Living Dead,
John Russo, right?
They sort of agreed that Romero could go make his zombie movies and Russo could go make his. And Russo came out with this Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
So tangentially it is connected to the original Night of the Living Dead.
I think the main difference between John Russo and George Romero, and I was going to talk about this actually at the start of Return, but since that can has been open, I might as well let it go now, is that I think George saw this as, art. He was trying to say something, and good on him. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it is the classic defining zombie movie series to date. Where John Russo, I think, knew that you could also make a sort of late night drive-in schlock horror film, and they're a lot more fun than Romero zombie films in a lot of ways. They're not as scary. They are, in essence, a lot more funnier.
Yeah, they're much more about the business of entertaining and keeping you feeding popcorn into your face.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily as about making you think.
Yes,
I think it's weird because we talked about it with Romero. Sometimes he gets so preoccupied with the things behind the zombies that he forgets to have fun with the zombies. If I complain about Romero, that's where I go.
Yeah,
not having fun with the zombies has never been Return of the Living Dead's problem.
No.
In fact, much the opposite.
No, and the rules are somewhat different. But we'll get to that when we get to Return of the Living Dead. I say, get on with it, man.
All right. Well, off we go with Of the Dead, Volume 2, Romero's Children.
Ring that bell.
They came to pay their respects.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Why do you have to be so cruel?
What?
Show some respect.
Now they're running for their lives.
A biologist in Stockton, California have released reports focusing on the phenomenon, specifically on that trance-like state.
Every shelter is becoming a trap.
Are you sure we're gonna be all right?
Cooper, you gotta help me out!
And every road out
Don't stop no matter what happens.
is just another dead end.
They're coming right for us!
George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
So, Tom Savini had wanted to get into the director's chair for a while. He's got a good relationship with George Romero, so when George decided he finally wanted to make a few dollars off of Night of the Living Dead, as he had not yet, George Romero rewrote the script and Savini got the directing job. I can imagine when people first saw this and it came out in 1990, it kind of came and went, didn't make any ripples in the water. But I can imagine some of the hardcore horror fans being a little bit disappointed. I can see on paper Tom Savini directing a remake of Night of the Living Dead. You'd want to go there with like raincoat on, expecting to just get blood spray off the screen. But because in 1990 we're still in the super hyper paranoid, let's edit horror movies because that will save society. The movie is fairly toothless as far as the violence goes.
I wouldn't say toothless, but it is definitely one of the weaker gore entries in the series.
It started out with an X rating, and in order to get any kind of release, it almost feels at times like a PG movie. That said, I think it successfully tells the story of Night of the Living Dead, and I think that, for the most part, the changes are for the better. I like the cast for the most part. I like the special effects on the zombies. And because it's Romero's remake, he's definitely allowed to fiddle. So if I have minor qualms with script changes, I guess I can make those complaints. But it's Romero's world. So yeah, where do you land on Night of the Living Dead, 1990?
Well, it was interesting to see right off in the opening credits Menahem Golan's name. who of course is one half of the Canon films. So that just, opened a floodgate of memories. It was neat to see that. I guess the big elephant in the room about Night of the Living Dead is, I wouldn't almost say beat for beat, like remake scene by scene of the original. There's that, and of course it has to compete with that. But it's Night of the Living Dead. I like the changes. I think they're interesting. Here's one thing though, and I actually watched it this time with the commentary by Tom Savini. And one thing, I don't think he outright, completely sympathizes with, but he has a lot more respect and love for the Cooper character in this version than the original does.
Well, I always write off the Cooper character as sort of the archetypical asshole character, but typically a Cooper character is like unmotivated shittiness. The thing is with Cooper is that in his head, everything he's doing is right. He's trying to protect his family, specifically his daughter, who has already been wounded by a zombie. He doesn't know she's going to change. He doesn't fully understand his situation. Now, how he goes about protecting his family and how he deals with people is very obtuse, ignorant, and it does nothing but escalate the situation.
Yes.
But why he's doing it, what his motivation is arguably somewhat pure. He wants to keep his family protected from the craziness that has suddenly erupted in the world.
If you if you stop and you think about it, and Savini comes out and says this, that in the end, Cooper was right about staying in the basement, and that's the biggest battle between him and Ben through the entire story. So to have the director say and believe that makes you kind of go, wow, like it's a really dark and pessimist story to begin with, but the asshole was right.
Yeah. Well, I think the major changes come to the end, but I think maybe we should work our way to there.
Sure.
First and foremost, I think, although early in his career, this is my favorite Tony Todd performance. I know he's played a lot of Klingons, and he's played Candyman, and he's involved with the Hatchet series, and he's a horror genre guy. But for me, he was always the guy from Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. He's very good in this.
Yeah.
He's very good.
And a lot of the people that make up the supporting cast have either established a cult name since or were cult names then. Patricia Tallman being a notable one. She was in Babylon 5 for Babylon 5 people out there.
Bill Moseley. I got it.
We got there just in time.
Yeah. The mighty great Bill Moseley is in this, and for fans, well, for true horror fans, you know who this guy is. He's in The Devil's Rejects, which really, the more I think about it, is a big long tribute to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But once again, getting off topic, the great Bill Moseley's in this, and for the brief scene, he's quite good.
This is another chance for us to make a brief correction for last episode too.
What's that?
Actually, the character that Bill Moseley plays, Johnny.
Yeah.
That's the brother who's killed. The main character that Patricia Tallman plays her in this version.
Yeah.
She and her brother are attacked by a zombie at the very beginning of the movie, and her brother's name is Johnny.
Yes.
And when we were reviewing the original movie, I believe we kept calling him Tommy.
Probably.
It's totally stupid because in my head I know it's Johnny, but whatever. So retroactive, whoops, but we know it's Johnny, so no more angry mail. Anyway, long, hard, uphill battle to get to. For the most part, I think the cast is good.
There's really no weak link. I will say this about Savini's remake. I actually think across the board the acting is better.
Yeah. I think that the couple in the basement, Katie Finnerman and William Butler, play Tom and Judy.
Yeah. But those are all, they were poorly written characters.
They're vaguely sketched characters, but I also felt a little bit of, I'm scared of the camera from especially her.
Yeah.
In those ones, but
they're timid characters to begin with.
Most horror movies will have a couple of performances that don't necessarily, nail it.
Yeah.
And this certainly didn't distinguish itself as being particularly bad. But
yeah.
Across the board, decent enough. And you can tell it is 1990 and that the zombies look significantly better.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some good choices. It's fairly restrained in its musical score. There's a sort of stillness and a silence to the movie that I think kind of works. The tension among the characters, the dynamic among the characters is shrill because it's all based on conflict and tension and sort of dick measuring. we were saying that the major conflict between Ben and Cooper has to do with the basement. I don't think the conflict necessarily has to do with the basement. They make it about that.
Yeah. Well, there's obviously underlying racism between the two.
Be it motivated by racism or whatever. Cooper doesn't like being told what to do, and Ben doesn't like to be told what to do. They both like to tell people what to do.
Yes.
And they both have problems dealing with someone who's playing boss. I would argue that Cooper's worse at dealing with it than Ben is.
Well, Cooper first turns homicidal, so...
Yeah. And I can't side with him. If that was the slant that Savini was taking, I guess I would say that he failed for me.
Yeah. Well, and therein lies the thing, because doesn't Cooper become homicidal in the first one as well, or does he attempt to?
Well, it becomes reduced to a shootout, and when the place is swamped by zombies, and indeed they are forced to go into the basement. But that had always been Ben's point.
Yeah.
If they were swamped upstairs, they could use the basement as a sort of a last resort. But, he liked the idea of having multiple escape routes, options.
Yes.
You only box yourself in when you have no choice but to box yourself in.
Yeah.
Cooper's solution was to just immediately box himself in.
Before, yeah.
Now, is he right or is he wrong? You're right. All of the noise of them hammering those doors up probably attracted the zombies to them. If they had just sat in the basement, a lot of the zombies may would have walked by. But the point is, the fact that they were constantly fighting, the fact that there was constant conflict, is part of the reason that more zombies were being drawn to them. And that works well enough, The major change, character-wise, is Barbara.
Yes.
In the original film, Barbara is basically catatonic after the first 10
Very
minutes
much low
of the movie.
status. She is essentially, worthless. I don't want to say it that much, but yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. I talked about it when my friend Karen and I reviewed Night of the Living Dead from a zombie episode early in the podcast.
Yeah.
I understand why people get pissed off that Barbara's such a weak female character, but I also think that it's a completely reasonable response to the situation. All of a sudden, dead bodies are coming back to life, and you saw your brother killed in front of you in a place that you'd already been afraid of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. It's maybe unfortunate that it was a woman, and when these characters come about, they do tend to be female, but I didn't necessarily call bullshit carte blanche on it.
Yeah.
But Romero did on himself, and in this remake, he made a business of making Barbara the only level-headed character. In fact, I think he weakened Ben a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I think Ben was far more aggressive and a lot more at fault in this one, which is why I think both him and Romero went that way, not only with Cooper, but with Ben.
Yeah.
Ben is just as responsible for the demise of that house with his own actions and decisions.
Yeah. And that's well played. I still remain more sympathetic to Ben because I think he's being more proactive for the group.
Yeah, where Cooper is really
very selfish. All me. And just snap his feet and listen to me. Yeah. Ben will get sort of backed into a corner and then he'll lash out. Whereas Cooper sort of starts by lashing out. Right? Great sequence that I think is better handled in this movie than in the original just because of the time it is made. The run for the gasoline. Yeah. In the original movie, it's always sort of bothered me, like, we talk about weak female characterizations. In the original, it seems like she is unable to move herself from the car. It's like she can't move. She's catatonic. She just freezes. In this one, at least, it's like...
It's the guy's fault in a lot of ways.
It's the guy's fault entirely. She doesn't have time to see what's about to hit her. Yeah. He just sees that the keys that they've brought, that they painstakingly trashed the house trying to find, bring to the pump, are not the keys that work. Yeah. And he decides he's going to shoot the lock off of the gas tank. It's a stupid call, but in a moment of panic, as zombies are running around it, and a guy who's not used to handling firearms, I kind of bought it. Yeah. And, I liked it. I thought it was well handled. Yeah. So, and I kind of like it. There's another good one when we talk about Dawn of the Dead remake, sort of the death by human error. Yeah. It's not always the zombies that get these people killed, right? It's sort of mistakes they make in panic or intergroup turmoil.
Yep. No, the changes made in the script, some of them subtle, some of them not so much, it's an interesting take. At the same time, it's still very much Night of the Living Dead. I guess I kind of want to jump towards the ending somewhat with Barbara and Cooper, because I thought that was a bold move.
Well, I'm split on the end of the film. Overall, it's a positive review.
Yes.
And there's two
And
major...
we're going to get into spoiler territory.
Absolutely.
Folks. Okay.
There's two major things that happen at the end that are a change.
Yeah.
One of which I love.
Yes.
One of which I kind of ambivalent even towards not liking at all. You know?
Okay.
I love that at the end of this, Ben's character winds up locked in the basement alone.
Yeah.
And as he's sitting there by his dying lantern,
Yeah.
about to light a cigarette,
Finds the key.
He looks up and he sees the gas pump key hanging off of a nail, clearly marked gas pump.
Yes.
And his reaction is to just start laughing hysterically.
Yes, and fade to black.
Like, and that is an ending for Ben's character.
Yeah.
Way stronger. And, you know, if he had to go, in a way, laughing is preferable to having his brains blown out by the random redneck the following morning.
Yeah.
What I like less is Barbara coming back to the house, finding Cooper still alive.
And murdering him.
And outright murdering him.
Why do you have a problem with that?
Well, if Romero is establishing Barbara as the one cool-headed person who wasn't fighting and was trying to keep her head, then I think it's somewhat undermined by the fact that she just commits an act of murder because she didn't like Cooper at the end of the movie.
It is essentially the loss of innocence, like, or all that is good in this world is sort of put to bed. That's how I took it, is that, you know, our most level-headed character who was trying to do good and made a lot of the right decisions. I mean, she's the smartest one to realize that you could literally walk away from these things.
Yeah.
That she ends up, after being, you know, found and saved by these redneck hunters, and that she ends up becoming a murderer and essentially joining these people.
I guess I read it as like it was a strong moment for her.
Yeah.
And if I'd read it as a defeating moment or as like this was her loss of innocence, maybe I'd be on the same page. But for me, I thought it was like, yeah, girl, shoot that fucking asshole. And again, that kind of countermines the point that we were building to, I thought. But it certainly wasn't enough to spoil the brew.
Yeah.
And I do think Patricia Tallman has some great moments. I will always remember, it's one of these indelible horror movie images.
Yeah.
The scene where she encounters a zombie who's carrying a doll.
Yeah.
And she's so disturbed by it, she has to put it down.
Yeah.
But she's so upset that it actually takes her a moment to steady her nerves enough to shoot it.
Yeah.
It's just a weird note, a beat in the film that passes by, and it's quite strong. I'm kind of disappointed that Savini hasn't done more directing.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He's he's a very capable director. He did quite well with the source material. Yeah. I was going to ask you if you knew why he never went back to directing. He sounded like he had a good time doing it.
Been long-standing rumors that he's going to direct a remake of an Italian zombie movie called Nightmare City. Mm-hmm. And it's up on his IMDb page as a directing project, and he's done some TV. He's done the Tales from the Dark Side.
He shows
and
up in
the
a lot of
Dead
Robert
Time
Rodriguez movies.
But I mean, as a director,
a
little bit, but not so much with the features.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were looking for like a special effects makeup gross up show from Tom Savini, you'll be disappointed. If you're looking for a decent take on Night of the Living Dead, you won't be. Yeah. And like I said, I didn't agree with all the choices made by the screenplay, but Romero wrote it, and Romero's allowed to do whatever he wants with this.
So you agree with her surviving at the end, because that's one of the differences.
There is a survivor, and that's why it was almost a happy ending. That's maybe why I didn't see it as well. She lived, but she was broken, I guess.
Yes, well, it's a very, very dark movie.
I think that the ideal Barbara for me was somewhere in between those two. You know, she doesn't have to be a babbling, catatonic, sort of useless person. But no
one gets out alive, though.
But I mean,
I think if you're going to survive,
you're going
to be tainted if you're going to survive something like that.
Either extreme is a hard sell. Either you're like, do you have to either be Rambet or completely useless, or can you find an imperfect hero somewhere in between? For the most part, big thumbs up on Night of the Living Dead.
I agree.
I've just been informed that we are going off the air and switching to the emergency broadcasting system.
Look up the road, there's a lot more of them. Why are they coming here?
Maybe they're coming for us.
Sooner or later, they're gonna get in here.
I'll
baby's gonna be fine. It's only a matter of time. It's coming. They'll find a way in.
Oh, God.
So here's the thing about Zack Snyder.
Okay.
He seems to be a well-loved commodity in Hollywood. He's had some monster hits. We're about to talk about one of them. Mm-hmm. But 300, Watchmen was sort of a mixed bag. But
I disagree, but okay.
Generally speaking, they're trusting him with big-budget properties, and he's,
for those
he's one of the Hollywood A players.
Yes.
Which is interesting to me because I don't think he's made a movie anywhere near as good as his remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Alrighty.
Now, a lot of people will disagree with me.
Yeah.
But that's where I stand. I keep waiting for Zack Snyder to live up to the potential of this first feature.
Okay.
But that's me. First and foremost, and it's going to sound like a negative thing that I say about this remake, but the social commentary
gone
is pretty much completely gone here. Mm-hmm. The whole consumer culture gone amok, what the zombies want, all of that gone.
This movie is designed to thrill and thrill alone.
Yeah, and fast zombies. They somebody was paying attention when they watched 28 Days Later and just decided after that movie, slow zombies just weren't going to be scary enough. So they committed to this fast zombies thing. And I wasn't one of those, this is bullshit, guys. I was ready to hear it. But I remember hearing in an interview, it was maybe Zack Snyder or maybe James Gunn, who wrote the screenplay, said that in his head that the fresher the zombie, maybe the faster it would move.
Yeah, okay.
So if this series was to progress, maybe by movie 2 or 3, the zombies wouldn't be quite so limber.
Yeah.
If the movie, in its entirety, had maintained the intensity and sort of suspense and energy of the first 10 minutes before the credit sequence, I would say that this was the equal or better than its original source material. It doesn't maintain that momentum, but this has one of the best cold opens for a movie that I can think of.
It does, pardon my sexual language here, but it does blow its cinematic load quite early with that opening sequence. There are some other thrilling and horrific moments, but that even from when they are falling asleep to him waking up and the girl comes in and all of that is well shot, well made, well paced, put together. It is quite the opening.
So here's our story. Canadian Sarah Polley. This movie was shot in Toronto, by the way. Canadian made.
Yeah.
She's a nurse, and we've been hearing weird radio reports. We're sort of getting the strange vibe, but she hasn't yet.
Yeah.
She's come off a night shift. She comes home to snuggle with her husband. They fall
also
asleep.
a famous Canadian actor, or at least not as famous as Sarah Polley, but
well, he didn't have as much to do.
Yes.
They wake up first thing the next morning, and the neighbor's kid is standing in their bedroom, and she's dead.
Not right.
And she attacks and kills Sarah Polley's husband, and she narrowly escapes in a very harrowing adventure. And
well-made stunt.
Falls out of the house, spills into her neighborhood, and sees that she's not alone. Whatever is happening to her is happening to everyone, and the world overnight instantly has turned to chaos. And she stumbles upon a mall and a bunch of survivors taking refuge there, most notably Ving Rhames as a sort of driven police officer.
Ty Burrell shows up halfway.
Ty Burrell, who's made a name for himself. And
Pfeiffer?
Yeah. There's a strong, good, solid cast here. No weak links.
Matt Frewer.
And basically, we sort of collect a bunch of survivors at the mall.
Yeah.
They stay at the mall as long as they can before realizing that it's, not a good place to be. And they attempt a bold escape from the zombie-infested city.
Yes.
So it shares the setting and the fact that there are zombies with the original Dawn of the Dead, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I'm not going to necessarily complain, because I think if they'd have, gone with another series of SWAT team and another news crew from a TV station and had sort of borrowed their plot too implicitly from the original, I would get that why did we bother thing.
Yeah.
In a way, the smart move was jettisoning the satire and just focusing on making this a really fun action horror movie.
Yes.
Because as it turns out, it's a really fun action horror movie.
Yes, it has its pauses, but when it gets going, it's quite the tense, violent feat.
I would say it's probably more of a fun, exciting movie than it is a horror one.
Yeah.
With the exception of that opening scene and a memorably disturbing bit involving a pregnant woman.
Yes.
Who is infected and slowly changes.
Yeah, the second we see here, we know this is not going to end well, and it doesn't.
I remember seeing this movie in the theater, and when the zombie baby showed up, people laughed.
Yeah.
But I think it was that sort of, oh my god, uncomfortable laugh.
Yes.
How you feel about the effect is how you feel about the effect. But
yeah.
I think the idea of it is horrible enough that even if they'd done it with a sock puppet, it would still have some sort of punch to it, you know?
Is this the first time we have a zombie baby?
I don't think it's the first time we have a zombie baby, but it's certainly the most graphic time we have a zombie baby.
Yep.
Unless you want to count Dead Alive, but that movie's just so fucking ridiculous across the board.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's fun, but the stakes are real. The characters are real. We don't want to have bad things happen to these people, and they do and will inevitably.
Yes. Yes.
Mekhi Phifer particularly gets a rough ride in this movie.
Yeah. Yes, he does. He's really good in it. You know, at this point, Mekhi Phifer has kind of put out some really good roles. He's in that Clockers. He's really good. I'm surprised he never, made it bigger. But anyways, I digress.
So, what do I want to say about Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead?
Well, it's the sort of dumber cousin, but it's the really good-looking cousin of the story.
Yeah.
It's well shot, well edited. Obviously, they have a lot of love, and there's little homages to the first Dawn of the Dead peppered throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Good use of the Johnny Cash song, I think.
It gets away with murder in a lot of ways for me, as far as its fairly radical shifts in tone. It gets away with surprising levels of deliberate humor. The whole sequence where they're using sniper rifles to kill zombies that resemble celebrities.
Yeah.
It's pretty dark, and it's played as pretty darkly funny. Like, they all know that it's dark, but they're doing it because what the fuck else are we going to do?
Yeah.
That's, it's an interesting thing. I like the idea of the guy who's trapped on the roof of his gun store, has all the guns in the world, and is across a parking lot from a sea of zombies to them, and he might as well be on another planet.
Yeah.
And their attempt to rescue him and get more ammunition is sort of what sort of spills into their attempt to escape the mall itself. Yeah. When it becomes increasingly clear that no help is coming.
Yeah.
What I didn't miss from the original is sort of that long sort of we're all going crazy because we're living life in a mall and we have all the things that we could possibly need.
Yeah.
But we're not happy. I still felt the stakes that everybody's family had died a few days ago, and that was still worn on people's faces. So many zombie movies seem to forget that.
Yeah.
That everybody would be...
Everyone's dealing with PTSD, essentially.
Yeah. Everybody's grieving, everybody's in shock, and everybody's just got this bewildered expression as they're watching all of these atrocities pile up in front of them.
Yeah.
There's a few small quibbly things that I would have.
What's that?
Some of the CGI in it, I don't know, when in the larger shots where we're seeing thousands and thousands of zombies.
When the truck blows up.
Yeah, that's a good example. Then I'm taken out of it momentarily for Computer World.
Yeah.
But that said, that happens to me in some shots in Lords of the Rings too.
Yeah.
It's just too much CGI, especially when you got a lot of really good practical effects. Too much CGI kind of reminds me, movie. If the fact that it's zombies isn't enough for me. There's another sequence when they're being chased out of the sewer, which is interesting. There's one more door left that they're trying to get the people on the other side to open up, and the zombies are coming behind them. And they're racing up and they're coming around the corner, and it looks like they're about to be eaten. And as the zombies round the corner and see them, all of the zombies simultaneously stop. And it's just it's almost to punctuate. This is a suspenseful moment.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why did the zombies stop? because they were asked to by the director. That just like they were on a dead run.
Yeah.
And their prey was cornered, but instead of just taking them, they stopped. And that air was, of course, enough air for the our heroes to escape briefly.
Yeah.
It's just one moment that doesn't read necessarily well. But for the most part, like, I like it. I like that when they first meet the security guards to the mall, they're complete dicks.
Yes.
And,
played by Michael Kelly and Kevin Zegers,
yeah.
Zegers, and what's that? Is it Michael Berry?
The head security officer.
It's Michael Kelly, who was in
House
of Cards.
And he was also in the Pacific, I believe.
Yes.
Anyway, I really like that character because we start out disliking him, and we sort of go on an arc, and we see his use.
Yeah,
we see where he might be an okay dude to have with you in the apocalypse.
Yeah,
but his initial position upon seeing people in his mall is "fuck you, get out."
Yeah,
and that's not a very good or understandable position when the worm is turning that quickly against you. Anybody who's alive for the first little while, especially if you're in a mall, should be your friend.
Yeah.
I don't know. Zack Snyder has done movies that are much more visually strong after this. 300 is abtacular, and The Watchmen is a very sort of meticulous attempt to bring a graphic novel to the screen. Sucker Punch is like
terrible.
It's like Brazil with
it's a
strippers.
huge misfire. But anyways, we're not here to talk about.
But I'm just saying. I started this by saying,
this is
for me, this is his high watermark. What for you beats it?
I really enjoy Watchmen. I think Watchmen's playing with grander and more adult themes. Yeah. I mean, you can quibble about it how faithful it is to the text, which is quite a bit, with the exception of the ending.
Right.
So I guess it's kind of hard, as much as Dawn of the Dead is a well-made action thriller, to try and compare it with Watchmen. It just has this. To me, Watchmen has this edge.
Not just anybody could make the Watchmen.
Exactly.
Arguably anybody.
And here's the thing about, say what you will about 300. It is a well-made, stylized action thriller.
Right.
So
it looks pretty. They obviously I understand why it made money. Absolutely.
Yeah. Zack Snyder knows how to make an action film.
I think he knows how to make good-looking movies.
Yes.
His storytelling's a little wonky for me.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
And I hope to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Going back to this Dawn of the Dead remake.
Yes.
We're getting a little bit sidetracked.
Yes.
There. I think the only times the movie really stops is when he lets his foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah.
He's really good at handling the suspense, really good at handling the action, and really good at getting the emotions there.
Mm-hmm.
But when they start and have a personal moment, when the Sarah Polley character starts being flirted with by one of the survivors,
Jake Weber, I think.
Jake Weber, thank you. Romance always seems weird and out of place in zombie movies, but it seems especially weird and out of place in this one. In that, like I said, a week ago he was married with children, and a week ago,
she had a husband.
Yeah. And that moment just doesn't read well.
It doesn't ring true, and it seems forced and contrived. Yes.
Yeah, but then when I was talking about the death by accident, there's a great scene when they're making their escape from the mall property, and they have holes and slats sort of cut in the side of the vehicle so that they can chainsaw the zombies up the side of the vehicle.
Yeah.
The vehicle takes a soft turn, or a hard turn, and a guy loses his balance with the chainsaw. And one of our survivors is...
Doesn't he kill the blonde one?
Yeah, she is more or less almost cut in half.
Yeah.
Whoops.
You.
I like that. I mean, it sort of seems like there's enough of a threat outside that we don't need this internal thing, but bad shit happens, especially if you're in a panicky moment, and that definitely qualifies.
It's a nice touch.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch. No, I mean, the man knows how to make a good-looking, well-paced action film. He's tri-media stuff, so I've seen the growth in Zack Snyder. That's why I'm hesitant to say Dawn of the Dead is his best movie, because he's growing and evolving as a filmmaker.
Right.
It seems to me he's going to be stuck in superhero mode for a while, which is a little bit disappointing. But no, Dawn of the Dead is good. I can't wait. I can't quite lay the gauntlet down that it's the best of his movies, but it is definitely well made. The changes are nice, but gone is the social commentary.
It's a very good movie, and
Yeah.
it breaks all the rules of remakes in that it takes very little from its source material. Like I said,
Yeah.
other than the setting and the fact that there are zombies.
Yeah.
But it is still a fitting tribute
Yep.
and a great entertainment.
Yep.
Dad's left a dozen messages. They're at the hospital.
Half the town's sick. We're overwhelmed. What the hell happened here?
We're blocking all phone lines until we get control of the situation.
Did the wounds look like bite marks?
What?
Dad?
Now,
We really need a doctor.
they're the only ones left alive
Where the hell are you going?
in a world of the living dead.
What the hell is happening to these people?
Nowhere to run.
No one's gonna be killed!
No place to hide. Today is
We got company.
the Day of the Dead.
Someone here is infected. What are we gonna do?
I'm not gonna die here.
So it's time to talk about, and not to tip my hand too much, the immensely disappointing remake to Day of the Dead.
Wow.
I know that you're
Tipping
not
the
a
hand, yes.
big fan of the original Day of the Dead, at least didn't
Yes.
rank as particularly high on the list for you
Yes.
with the original Romero films.
Yeah.
But I got the feeling that Day of the Dead, everybody who worked on the original Day of the Dead wanted to be there and was really passionate about making
A lot of love went into Day of the Dead. You can't argue there.
They wanted to make a good-looking, meaty, for lack of a better term, zombie movie that you
Yeah.
hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
I don't get that impression watching this one.
This was greenlit because of the success of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Really.
I think that other than Ving Rhames, who apparently I think must like doing zombie movies because he shows up in a lot of them,
We'll get to Ving.
nobody here seems to really want to be there.
No one does.
It
Ving
doesn't-
looks bored in this movie. He literally looks bored when
I
we
think
first
he has
meet
fun
him.
being a zombie. Spoilers. I
Yes.
think once he's a zombie, I think he's kind of gets
He's
into
only
it.
a zombie for what, 5
Two
minutes?
scenes,
Two
yeah.
scenes, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like you almost sort of have to. I know Vin needs to eat and work and
Yeah.
and whatnot. And I mean, whatever. Finding out off for Day of the Dead, but his role is so small and in a lot of ways insignificant that you kind of go like he looks bored throughout the movie.
He's
then
there-
he dies.
yeah.
Then he's a zombie for.
A couple scenes.
And that's it. So it's kind of like
He's there so they can put the name and Ving Rhames on the
Yeah.
DVD case.
yes.
And the movie doesn't do much better to the left and right of it. I don't know who chose to cast Mina Savari as Sarah
This
Bowman.
movie is hugely miscast across the board.
like
not
she's
just
supposed to be a tough as nails military chick, right?
and
she looks like a gust of wind would bruise her face. Like she
Yeah.
just doesn't look tough. I don't believe her.
Yeah, no.
I know she can put her hair back tight in a ponytail and talk in a serious robotic voice.
Yeah.
But I don't believe she could take a punch in the face.
Yeah, no,
Nor could she give one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that sounds like dismissive or sexist
No,
or
it's
whatever.
it's not just her who's just horribly miscast or just downright terrible. Nick Cannon, every time he opens his mouth in this movie, you're like, "Wah!" Both of them are terrible or just hugely miscast.
And Nick Cannon playing the character of Salazar, who's sort of the wacky black guy, right?
Yes.
For lack of a better word.
Will Smith cubed.
Yeah.
Short of saying "damn" every second line.
But it's not even short of that. It's sort of exactly that.
Yeah.
Everything I was talking about with Dawn of the Dead, with the sort of stakes,
Yeah.
with the sort of stakes of the situation being taken seriously,
Yeah.
are not present in Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
Everybody clearly knows that they're in a movie, and
Yeah.
from the look on their faces, everybody knows they're in a not very good movie.
Well, once again, I have theories about this, and I talked about this earlier, off microphone, if you will.
Right.
That I think what happened here is someone wrote, a sort of a half-decent zombie movies. Dawn of the Dead remake came out and was a huge hit. And so some producer saw this and went, hey, why don't we change a couple of names here, slap on Day of the Dead, get the rights, and boom, here we go.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because
not even in spirit is this I mean, yes, an army base is involved in this movie, but they don't really get to this underground bunker until the quarter part, and it's so much, not even in spirit, a remake of Day of the Dead. They have a Bud character.
There's a character, that's what I was about to say, a guy named Bud. I've seen that actor before. He was in Band of Brothers, I think. He's not a bad actor, but he's got a tough role. And not only do they not try to explain why Bub is a sentient creature, in the original Day, at least he's being trained for weeks and months by a doctor. In this one, it seems like he had a crush on Mina Savari, and he was a vegetarian. Those are the two things we knew about him before he got bit. So once he got changed, he still likes Mina Savari. And he's a vegetarian zombie?
Yeah, I know. This is the level that we're dealing with here.
That really hurt to say out loud.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Like, the fact that they included a character named Bud tells me that structurally at some point...
I think they just...
an add-on.
I think it was a total add-on. Let's just change this character to be Bud and off we go.
Also, can I say terrible CGI throughout?
Not only terrible CGI, but... I think the editing really stuck out to me this time about how like generically TV it was. Let's try and be cool with the fast sped up cuts and whatnot, but
quick editing cuts, flash cuts between
but it
edits
seemed
to make an
so
illusion of something happening.
Dull that it made even the sort of action scenes just.
The sort of in between quick cutting scenes you're talking about have the same effect of like a needle scratch on a record for me. It's just like, ow, that hurt my ears, and why are you doing that? You're where'd the music go? And it's not even that we're listening to good music. I'm the kind of guy that I can sit back and get behind a zombie movie that is completely stupid. And in the interest of playing devil's advocate, the one thing I will get for this Day of the Dead is that it moves. It moves pretty quickly, and there's a lot of violence in it. It will hold your attention, but it's not worth your attention.
It's just strange because the director of this is Steve Miner, and say what you will, but he has at least made competent slasher thrillers. Like, he's been in this, playground before and has made competent thrillers. Say what you will about Lake Placid, but at least you can say it was competently made.
He seems like a solid enough for hire director of genre. But like I say, I think that you wanted somebody who was passionate and excited about making a remake of Day of the Dead, not just some guy. And Steve Miner, I didn't get the impression, was super excited to be working in the zombie genre and wasn't, worried about doing justice to George A. Romero's original concept. Like, there's so many places they could go in this. The original script that George Romero wrote for Day of the Dead, you can get it online and with special editions of the movie. Why not try to, base your screenplay on his original concept?
I agree. I think the idea of having a whole bunch of people suffering extreme PTSD locked down in an army bunker with this huge threat just waiting for them outside and seeing the pathos inside that community down is prime for a great zombie story.
Really, all they had to do was make the characters likable, which is what the original film failed to do. They probably weren't going to be able to beat the special effects, but they could have done that. I don't understand the choices made throughout this movie.
Well, I think this movie was made by an executive committee and not just by a couple of passionate people. I agree. It seemed very much like a cheap money grab.
If you're looking for somebody to make a low-budget zombie movie, why not hire somebody who's fucking excited about making a low-budget zombie movie, I believe that those guys are out there. I would say that, Steve Miner will get another job. There's some franchise that needs a new chapter, If he's not passionate about it, then he'll grab the next thing that comes along. Give Day of the Dead to somebody who cares. Because I care about Day of the Dead, and because I care about Day of the Dead, I do not care for this Day of the Dead. And again, like the casting across the board. Deeply questionable.
Like someone, like I said, I think there was a committee behind this camera going, okay, let's make this hip and modern and new age, and we get the snappy black guy, we get the fast-paced, kinetic editing. We got, the good-looking person, blonde girl, roll camera. No, it hurts. It hurts.
With the exception of a amusing sequence in which Ving Rhames devours his own eyeball. I would say none but the biggest zombie fans should hear enter. It bums me out.
Here's a tissue.
Short and sweet. Anything else you want to say about
No, I think the sooner we get off this.
Why do you eat people?
Not people. Brains.
How do you kill something that's already dead?
Well, how do I know, Fred? I don't know. Let me think. It's not a bad question, Bert. In that movie, they destroyed the brain to kill him. Is that what they did? The brains, right.
Brains!
Brain! The brain! I hit the brain. Oh! Get it off! 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 Get it off!
The military is nervous.
How was your day?
Usual crap.
The police are confused.
Send more cops.
It worked in the movie! Well, it ain't working now. Brain the movie line!
So it's funny. I'm kind of sick, as I mentioned earlier, and semi-delirious. And it seems to me the last time that I sat down to talk about Return of the Living Dead, my friend Ryan Giese was doing an episode with me, and it was so hot in here. We had the fan blowing in our faces, and I was deliriously trying to convince him of the great quality of this work. He'd never seen it before. It was his first pass, and I think maybe if you hadn't grown up with it, it was hard to take it all in at once.
Yeah.
So it didn't rank particularly high for him, but it did for me on the list.
Yes.
So I've already come out on the rank and review as saying I'm a big fan of this movie. I like that it's a zombie comedy, and to me it's like the first real zombie comedy.
Yes.
I'm sure that there were others before this, but this was the zombie comedy.
This is the gem of the zombie comedies.
And it's that punk rock thing, and I don't mean the aesthetic, like the way they looked, but just the attitude and vibe of the movie is totally punk.
Do you want to party?
I do want to party.
It's party time.
So, yeah, Dan O'Bannon, writer-director.
You know what? I'm starting to come around on Dan O'Bannon. I know you and I have had this conversation before, and our sort of distrust or even somewhat dislike of Dan O'Bannon. But of late, I'm starting to see how talented this guy was. There's a documentary called Jarodowski's Dune that I think you need to see.
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, and he comes across as quite intelligent and quite good.
He also comes off as quite crazy in a movie, actually about this movie, Return to the Living Dead, I think it's called. He I got the feeling like he was a percentage crazy. Yeah. But, of course, I don't think he's untalented. Yeah. He wrote some interesting scripts.
Co-wrote Alien.
He's credited with the original screenplay for Alien, although, like I say, I'm sure his screenplay and the actual movie of Alien that we saw very different.
Yeah.
But, he started his career working with Carpenter, and he earned his little place in genre.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a particularly prolific filmmaker, but for the fact that he made Return of the Living Dead, I am very grateful.
There are basically, I'd say, a large handful of films that make me smile from ear to ear, from opening credits to the very end. Blues Brothers is in that group. Big Trouble in Little China is in that group. Even a little They Live.
Yeah.
Return is right in there.
Yeah.
Nestled right deep going, yeah, there you like it. You like it a lot.
There is something grimy and exploitive about it, of course.
Yes, it embraces
talked about the Linnea Quigley
it
scene where the chick just strips for no reason in the middle of the graveyard.
I just want to be naked.
Yeah, I want to be naked in front of my friends.
Yes.
It's just a thing that I do. It's an affectation.
Yeah.
I guess we should do some service to the plot.
Should we? Should we really for the viewers?
If you don't know, and if you don't, you should. A group of friends are hanging out. They're a bunch of punks, really.
Yeah.
Are hanging out with inexplicably a couple of square-looking kids.
Yes.
And they're waiting for their friend to get off of work. Freddie. He's starting a new job at a warehouse. And since they have a few hours to kill before Freddie's done work, they decide to kick back in a graveyard and fuck some shit up. And meanwhile, Freddie and his charming new boss, Frank, played by James Karen, inadvertently cause a leak in a couple of containers from the military, which
and they
immediately poisons them.
They do lip service to Night of the Living Dead.
Absolutely. It immediately poisons them, and in their attempt to destroy the evidence of the leak and the reanimation that it was causing, the problem spills on into the cemetery.
Yes.
Zombies come out and run and chase.
Yes.
A lot of people will give 20 Days Later credit for starting the running zombies. Not so. Return of the Living Dead.
They do. They do have running zombies that come upon the ambulance people.
A lot of people, when they think of zombies, think brains. That's not Romero. That's Return of the Living Dead zombies.
Brains.
Yeah.
And the tar zombie.
Yeah, the very famous sort of rubbery Tarman zombie.
More brains. Yes.
A lot of stuff that people would probably assume are Romero or quote sort of zombie rules or just understood zombie laws come from Return of the Living Dead. It's surprisingly influential in that way.
Yes. Well, one of the things that makes this movie way better than it actually should be, and we have to do a shout out to both Frank and Freddie, James Cairn and Tom Matthews. I do believe is how you pronounce it.
Tom Matthews, yeah, he actually is the star of my favorite Friday the 13th movie as well.
Yes.
Part 6.
Yeah, he had a bit of a career. But those two make the movie for me. They're awesome. They're the sort of modern day Abbott and Costello. Another shout out to the character of Ernie, played by Don Calfa, who's a friend of Frank's. All three of them,
and Clu Gallagher as Bert the boss.
Yes, Clu Gallagher, the great Clu Gallagher.
Yeah, I do. I love the relationship between James Cairn and Clu Gallagher.
Yeah.
James Cairn is trying to, keep the situation under control, and finally he has to break down and call the boss.
Call Bert.
And I just love... I love how real they play the situations.
Yeah.
The comedy is super dark, but it all comes from the situation.
Yeah.
With the exception of the zombies themselves, the characters don't tend to go, come on. The comedy sort of comes out organically in a lot of ways.
Shut your mouth if you like this job. Like this job.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. They all do very well. And I have to give credit both to them, the script, and Dan O'Bannon for doing that.
Yeah.
All of them it works quite well. They know exactly what kind of movie this is, and they go with it.
And the zombie effects, I have to say,
are awesome.
Before computer generation's taken over anything. I talked about it before, but that one female zombie that they cut in half and interrogate.
Yeah.
That interrogation scene is just amazing.
Yep.
I really think
the puppeteers in this movie definitely earn their paycheck.
The animatronics are however they're doing that, and the performance very, very strong.
Yeah.
And this sort of darkness, so the fact that this need they have to eat brains in this one is sort of motivated by physical pain.
I was going to ask you why the choice to eat brains. It's great. I love it. But why the brains and not stick with the whole, they're going to just eat you?
I don't know. Maybe it's an immediate threat, or it was a way of him sort of clearly drawing a line between Romero's version of the zombies and his.
Yeah.
These are also unkillable zombies. In Romero rules, if you destroy the brain, they're done. But these guys seem to keep going no matter what you do to them.
Which makes them even more terrifying and deadly in that regard.
If you cut off their hand, the hand flaps around on the ground and tries to grab you for some reason.
Yes.
It's absurd, but these are the rules of this.
Yeah.
This is not a survivable scenario by any means.
No, I love the ending because of it.
But basically the zombies can say brains and anything that would be an ironic sort of action movie punchline or zinger, like send more paramedics or whatever.
Send more cops. Yeah.
And again, all done with either prosthetics or using genuine amputees in some cases to make it look authentic. For such a silly movie, you feel the love.
Yes.
You know how I was talking about in the Day of the Dead remake where I didn't feel the love?
Yes.
In this movie, I just feel love all over the place. Like, everybody was so into this movie.
It was squirting with love.
Yeah, so, big fan. It certainly deserves its cult notoriety.
Yeah. Oh yes,
and it's not
it's
one of
hugely
these movies,
exploitive.
Yeah, it's not one of these movies, by the way, that was discovered later that slipped past the radar. Right away, everybody seemed to recognize that Return of the Living Dead was special. It did good business.
Yeah,
and
enough to warrant a sequel.
Yeah, so you're kind of right in your sort of wish that Dan O'Bannon had his chips together enough to produce more work. But
it has probably one of the most redonkulous scenes of graphic nudity ever put on film.
Yes,
this is not a complaint, by the way. I know I'm going to show my piggish side, but I mean, I'll be honest. But the excuse for nudity in this movie is outrageous.
I honestly am a little bit embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
Like, it so comes out of nowhere.
Sure.
But it's also part of this weird punk rock feel because... Why do we have tits now? Because it's time for the titties. There's just whatever. And Linnea Quigley is totally fine with it. She wasn't being exploited. She's a woman who is regularly cast because of her willingness to disrobe.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think that it does go on quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
It's basically like the Salma Hayek dances with a snake sequence in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Only she's full on naked. But it does feel like it just keeps going.
Yep.
And what are all her friends doing? Dancing and grooving around her? Like, don't encourage this behavior. She's clearly mentally ill to be acting out this way. Good friends would ask her, why is she expressing herself in this way? What is
but
this
some of them
need?
seem ambivalent, or the men are like, yeah.
The guys are into it because they're young and dumb. But
yes.
The girls, need to get real with her. I think. Where is this coming from? This is not safe behavior, I don't think.
No, but there's not a lot of safe behavior in Return of the Living Dead. Can we talk about the ending?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, of course, spoilers. The ending. The general that we meet about halfway or quarter mark through the movie, who's also, I think, drunk for most of it.
We get the idea he's been waiting for these canisters of gas to be found.
What's the line he keeps on repeating?
I can't remember.
It's not. I took the wrong way to quit smoking. That's Airplane, but it's something.
I don't know what you're referring to. That's weird because I've seen this movie a lot of times.
Oh god. Oh, there's something about this general that's.
Or
maybe it's just his day was crap. Everything was crap.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's obviously a grumpy curmudgeon, and he's been waiting to get this phone call of these things discovered. It's like he can't retire.
Yes.
He can't put his effects in order until this fuck up is corrected.
Yes.
And there's a wall of lights and.
I think I'm starting to remember now. He just said everything was crap.
Yeah.
His poor wife is just waiting for him as he gets home.
Yeah.
With slippers and almost a pipe.
He can finally deal with this situation, but he deals with it swiftly and severely.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's necessary. Maybe it's the right call, but the movie language tells us that it's a bad call.
Yeah.
I actually always thought it was interesting that when they did do the sequel, that they bothered with the canisters again.
Yeah.
Because it seemed implied by the movie. Spoilers, everybody dies. Nihilism wins the day in this comedy.
Yeah.
They drop the bomb and the whole area is just blown up.
Yeah.
But we see all of the smoke from the fires rising into the sky.
And it goes
then we
to
see
another
the rain
grave.
falling down on another graveyard. And all they've done is
made it worse.
Increase the problem. Roll credits while punk music plays. They didn't need to bother re-explaining the zombies for the next movie. They could have just made the next movie.
I love the fact that Frank kills himself. He sort of wheels himself into the cremator and cries and presses the on button.
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice touch.
Weirdly, I guess, kind of sweet moment. You get the feeling like Frank's got a wife at home who loves him and he loves her.
Yeah.
He has to cremate himself, which is a particularly nasty way to go.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the relationship between he and Tom Matthews.
Yeah.
When they are originally gassed, they're killed by the gas.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't realize it. They're actually zombies for a while. It takes a while for their brains to catch up to the whole being a zombie thing.
Yeah.
But their slow discovery and their painful transformation is at once, horrifying and quite funny.
Yes. Yes, it is.
There's a great sequence with these paramedics trying to do just basic experiments on them to, blood pressure, pulse, nothing, no reflexes, nothing.
It's very Marx Brothers in a lot of
And they
ways.
both switch to the other guy to check each other's equipment, and they both sort of stand up and like, And that's the best humor of this movie. Like I say, it's situational. It's
Really?
very kind of organic.
I think that taxidermy dog being beaten to death by the crunch, that for me at that point, I
but
still
again,
giggle.
it seems strangely natural. They supplied veterinary schools, so they
Oh, no.
had split dogs.
Yeah.
The split dogs were resurrected by the guests, and they were making noise.
I would think Peter Jackson would love this movie.
I would think anybody who's got a percentage of sort of genre crazy in their mood, would like it. Some people will be made uncomfortable by that naked scene, but it's one and done. Well, I guess Linnea Quigley is basically naked for the rest of the movie.
It's so ridiculous and knows that it's exploitive.
It knows that it's crazy. That's the thing. You're right. That might be the difference.
What year is this movie?
I want to say 84.
Because this wouldn't be like this would be
85 according to the DVD.
85. So I'm thinking like Evil Dead 2. What year is Evil Dead 2? Is it the same 85?
No, I think it's a little past there.
So would this be like the whole start of the sort of horror comedies? Can we lay that at Return of the Living Dead?
Well, probably Ghostbusters. All right, that was the
you have it there.
Yeah,
you have it there.
But this is a hard R horror comedy.
Yeah,
Ghostbusters was spreading a much wider net. You could bring your kids to Ghostbusters. Do not bring your kids
to Return of the Living Dead. Yeah.
A deadly experiment. A freak accident. A secret that will be carried to the grave as the horror classic is reborn. Return of the Living Dead, Part 2. Jesse will be the first to know. Billy will be the first to go.
We've got to get out of here, get to a phone.
7 of the living against an army of the dead, starved for life.
So, Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Sequels generally had a hard time in the 80s.
Yes.
Maybe that's part of the reason people were so surprised by Return of the Living Dead, because they looked at it as a sequel of sorts to Night of the Living Dead, even though it was kind of an alternate world. Just a branch off the tree of Romero.
Yeah.
Typically, I find in the 80s sequels didn't do well. They tended to just go darker and dumber. I don't necessarily think they went darker, but they definitely went dumber.
Yeah.
In this one. And they did that thing that you'll see a lot of the 80s and the early 90s where, like, what worked in the first movie? Well, we like these two actors, so let's bring these two actors back.
One of the great cardinal sins of any movie, which is it's more of the same. Like, literally the jokes are the same.
They Die Hard to this.
Yes.
To a pretty bad degree. The same actors play variations of the same characters in variations of the same situations, telling the same jokes, but looking at the camera and winking awkwardly while they do it.
I love the fact that you referenced and made light of Die Hard 2 all at the same time.
Yeah.
You've created another jump the shark. They Die Hard 2.
They Die Hard 2'd it.
All right,
well, that's the most obvious example where
they
take all
saying for you.
They take all the elements, you know.
Yeah.
Christmas, hostage negotiation, crawling through vents, blah blah blah.
They Die Hard 2'd it. Okay.
But so sometimes you can make that fly, and the writer-director that they have
Ken Wiedelhorn.
He's known for Meatballs 2 and a bunch of other movies. Like, this was not his first rodeo, and he did write...
Wiedelhorn.
Yeah. It's not his first rodeo. He did write the script. But again, much like when I was talking about the remake of Day, I do not feel the love here. I really feel like they were just trying to repeat what worked in the first movie, and by making all the comedy, the winking, and not necessarily organic and situational, like I praised the first one for, that didn't work. And anything that they added was to the detriment of the movie. I don't, as a rule, like horror movies where the main characters are kids, because I don't feel scared for them. That's definitely the case with the main character of this movie.
Yeah.
You know, when I saw the kid filing through his comic collection at the beginning of the movie, no part of me believed that he was seriously on the table for any real kind of death.
Yeah.
Right? And I also think that little kid, with the exception of the returning Tom Matthews and James Karen, is probably the best actor.
No, there's a lot of grading going on in this movie.
There's some pretty wooden acting throughout. Some of the kids are bad, but I will give them a pass. But a lot of the adults are bad.
The girlfriend is unbelievably terrible. What's her name again?
I was trying to remember the character's name, but...
I'm pretty sure it's Lucy.
Marsha Deitlin plays Lucy Wilson.
Sorry, Marsha, if you're listening to this, but here we go.
Brutal.
Sorry, and it's your first movie. I get it, but wow.
It's not entirely her fault because the character is really annoying.
Yeah.
But she is screaming and shrill and whiny.
Yeah.
And her boyfriend's a grave robber and she waits in the fucking car while he's pulling jewelry off of corpses, right?
Yeah.
And she's totally okay with that. We don't care if any of these people die, right? We kind of care if the kid dies, but mainly because he's a kid who's bullied and collects comics, and we're nerdy zombie fans, so we remember being kids who were bullied and collected comics.
Yeah.
But nobody else in the movie is worth cheering for. His older sister seems to hate his guts. She's completely shitty to this friendly cable guy who shows up and is clearly crushing on him.
Yeah.
But everything she says to him is shitty, even when he repeatedly attempts to save her from zombies. She's 100% snark across the board.
Yeah.
I don't know, like...
You know who they should have gotten to make this movie?
Somebody who cared?
Joe Dante. I think he would have been perfect, ripe for something like this. That's what I sort of feel when I come away from Return of the Living Dead. Is that you should have gotten someone who could bring something new to the table and say no, and has a love for the genre. Yeah, like you said earlier,
somebody who wants it, someone who likes it. Again, what worked the first time, let's do that again, and we'll throw some kids in there.
Yeah,
that was about as deep as the thought seemed to get on it.
I felt nothing through this. That was the one thing. The end credits rolled, and it was sort of,
I'm going to say one positive thing, for sure.
Sure, okay.
There's some magnificent zombie effects in the movie. There's a couple of scenes. The first zombie that the James Karen character encounters, it sits up, and he swacks it in the head, and it sort of looks at him, and it almost looks like one of those Beetlejuice creations in a way. Like, it doesn't look 100% real, but it's a wonderful, marvelous-looking puppet. And, again... They look right. There's the whole zombie who gets stabbed in the head with a screwdriver and is being lifted, and she's screaming and yelling at them. Like, the special effects are good. Somebody put time and care and love into the special effects, but nobody put any time into the script. And obviously not a lot of care into the casting beyond, who can we get back from the original. Yeah.
No, and even Tom Matthews and I'm sorry, what's the other guy's name again?
James Karen. They look a little embarrassed.
Yeah, once again, they look bored.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a paycheck, and they had fun making the first movie. But
so
I think
why not?
They they'll take the paycheck, but I think they must have realized pretty quickly, like, oh, dude, it's too bad. They almost killed the franchise with this movie, because this movie was kind of the polar opposite response to the original, whereas the original was well received, and
it's just sad that you could make
it was poorly received.
It's sad that you could, and I guess you have to try really hard to make a dull zombie film, but yet somehow they can pull it off.
Yeah, well, I guess there was a bit of a zombie renaissance in the 80s, but it's certainly not like now where there's zombies left, right, and center. People just get tired of seeing them.
But I felt nothing, Lebowski.
I did not laugh. I did not cringe. I just felt the time drifting by and my ass getting numb.
Apathy.
Yeah.
God, Kurt, that was incredible. Let's do it again.
Contain it, damn it! Seal it off now!
Is that what I'm gonna become?
These poor dead bastards crave brains.
She didn't live. She gave you something bad.
I feel so hungry.
Never find you down here. What have you done?
If she attacks him, he becomes like her.
I just get a little confused sometimes.
Love never dies.
Brian Usna.
Yo.
Uh,
Usna.
He's seems to work a lot with Stuart Gordon,
which is a good thing.
And he, like Stuart Gordon, seems to specialize in sort of hard R, low budget genre entries.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll shoot.
Did a couple of Reanimators.
Yeah.
He did The Dentist. If anyone's seen that, it's a sequel.
A lot of the movies they shoot in Europe for budgetary purposes.
Yeah.
So they have weird dubbing to them, and there's usually strange peaks and valleys. There'll be really good special effects, but not great performances, or really good performances, but not great special effects. There seems to be a push and pull with him.
Yeah.
But he's an interesting choice.
Wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
That's right. He's an interesting choice to do Return of the Living Dead Part 3.
Yes.
And he's definitely somebody who came with, like, what am I going to bring to this? He was a fan of the series, he said. He might have just been being polite about Part 2, which you and I were not. But he wanted to find a way to make a Return of the Living Dead Part 3 that was a valid entry into the series, but did something a little different.
Yep.
And the way they found to do this is to sort of, in a vague, somewhat structural way, do kind of a Romeo and Juliet tragic love story.
Yeah.
And build that around these crazy zombie effects and the off-kilter violence and humor that we would expect from a Return of the Living Dead vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to say it's a 100% lock, slam, bang, well-played success, you know?
Yeah.
I can't, because there's some very real problems. But I think that coming off of Part 2...
Yeah.
This is what, you know, a sequel to The Return of the Living Dead probably should have looked like.
Well, it succeeds in that it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still that zany, goofy, bizarre, late-night drive-in, anything can happen feel to it. Especially when they get to underneath the river in those tunnels. That movie's kind of goes off the loony bin a little bit, to its benefit, I find.
Yeah.
But, so, right off the bat, there's something new to this.
You don't necessarily know where the movie's going.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is no map. They're not constantly winking at you about the previous movie.
Yeah.
But there are things tethering it to it. Trioxin is involved. The military is involved.
Yeah.
Sort of teenagers being dumb teenagers sort of play a part into it.
Yeah.
Basic story is the son of a high-ranking military official sneaks his girlfriend... into a science lab after a horrible accident.
Well, she essentially, you know, invites herself in.
Yeah. Well, but once they realize that this place is, you know, has toxins that can bring people back to life, when she dies in a terrible accident, he wants to bring her back. And she is resuscitated, but remembers who she is and remembers that she loves him, but is increasingly having to deal with the fact that she's got this hunger.
Yeah.
And interestingly, as we progress through the story, she finds she's able to satiate her hunger through pain.
Yes.
Acts of self-mutilation and violence sort of seem to quench her need to chew on some brains.
Good old sadomasochism going on here.
So he loves her, she loves him, but she's turning into a monster. The military are after them, and through complicated workings of the plot, so are some gang members, some hoods.
Yeah.
And they get mixed up with the sewer dude.
Yes, come feel my papi. Those guys. I'm so glad the stereotypical racism is still alive and well.
And that's some of the stuff that I would like. The script has some pretty serious problems, and there's definitely some generalization,
stereotypes,
less than enlightened sort of portrayals of ethnic people happen here. It's weird because it's kind of that really awkward, I don't think it was deliberate racism, but it was there, you know?
Yeah.
But I look past it. I also think some of the effects, and I'm usually the guy who will praise all of the prosthetic effects.
Yeah.
Makeup effects are my choice.
Yeah.
Some of them look like they're wearing a rubber costume or kind of silly.
They had a budget with this.
Some of the zombies look
small budget.
Some of the zombies look significantly better than others, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
But because I didn't know where the movie was going from one sequence to the next, And because the zombies look good and I was sort of constantly off balance, I was able to see past the flaws and find actually a pretty solid zombie sequel, and one that I think people kind of might have missed.
A shout out has to go to Melinda Clarke, who plays
the lead,
essentially our antagonist. We want to call her that.
The
girlfriend who essentially kickstarts the whole thing. I mean, the boyfriend does kind of go along for the ride, but she's the one that creates her own demise in a lot of ways.
She's like living on the edge, daredevil, high maintenance girlfriend.
Yeah.
Again, it speaks to sort of the passionate love of the teenage years. Yeah. When you're in love as a teenager, you're so in love, and it's gonna be forever. But really, this person is exhausting. Just like give it 6 months.
Yeah,
right. Everybody just needs to calm down a little bit.
It's kind of funny though that Melinda Clarke looks a lot like a young, what's her name from Superman 2? Who's in this movie? Sarah, what's her name? Sarah Douglas. Who she was the female, that trio from Superman 2. Mm-hmm. General Zod.
Superman 2. The original Superman, yes.
Yes. Anyway, Sarah Douglas, who is in Superman 2, she's in here as one of the sort of generals of the army. And she looks a lot like our lead actor when she was younger. I thought that was sort of an interesting little take on it.
I missed that. For the nerds out there and the Firefly fans out there, the lead actress, the lead hot zombie, whose name I'm trying to get to here on the Internet Movie Database.
Melinda Clarke?
The main character?
Yeah. The girl who gets the...
Okay, Melinda Clarke, thank you. She shows up in Firefly. There's an episode of Firefly where Mal and the gang are protecting these prostitutes in a sort of western planet, and Mal sleeps with her and she's killed.
Okay.
It's funny because I remember watching that with my wife, and I was like, who is that chick? I know that chick. Yeah. She's the sexy zombie from Return of the Living Dead.
Okay. That was very nerdish. High five.
Yeah. Nerdy notice. But here's the thing I would like to say about that. That's a tough role to approach and a tough role to cast. Yeah. And I've been in the awkward position of trying to cast somebody where you're going to ask someone you don't know to do something that's somewhat uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. She's wearing a makeup effect, but it's over herself. Those weren't actually her breasts that were exposed, but she did have to show some nudity for it.
Yeah.
And on set, it basically looks like she's walking around with her boobs hanging out the whole time. Yeah. But basically, she's wearing an entire body prosthesis.
Yeah.
And she's trying to deliver this performance through it.
Yeah. She does well.
I think she does amazingly well.
No, she makes the movie work.
It's not an easy thing to do, and if they'd cast Linnea Quigley or just some porn actress because they wanted somebody who was willing to show skin, but didn't hire somebody who was willing to act, it would have really hurt the movie, and it could have been easily done. It's a brave thing to do, and I think it's kind of not fair that men aren't asked to do it so often. It's not going to be in your contract that you got to hang out with your wang out in this movie. It doesn't happen, but for women, that's the case, you know.
So you're saying that Return of the Living Dead needed more wang?
Well, maybe we need to equalize the nudity somewhat. I don't know. I don't particularly need more wang, but maybe the ladies do.
Are you sure?
I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Maybe seeing the wang would be a real deal breaker.
On that note,
did I sway off topic?
You did. You talk of wang swayed us. All right. No, this movie. I was surprised by it. I guess after the low expectations of number 2, I pressed play thinking, okay, here we go.
Let's get this done for Larry's podcast. And that's interesting because this was their first pass on it, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. I couldn't decide because I remember I watched this with a friend of mine when it first came out.
Yeah.
And we kind of made fun of it and went, oh, lame movie, blah, blah, blah. Titty zombie.
Yeah.
But it kind of stuck in my head. And I remember seeking it out again and thinking, you know what? This movie ain't bad. And that's kind of where I land, you know. It's not bad. Yeah. It's certainly not amazing.
No. Well, Brian Usna will never, make a Pulitzer Prize-winning classic. I have to give a special shout-out to Basil Wallace, who plays the Riverman.
The Riverman.
I'm the Riverman. in this movie as well.
Very cruel fate for that character.
Yeah, you might remember him from that awful Steven Seagal movie, Marked for Death, where he played Screwface.
Okay.
He's also in Blood Diamond.
Okay.
He's kind of like Zeg Smokey for, sometimes during the 80s and 90s. He would sort of be cast as the sort of African warlord who was the villain, or Jamaican mobster, whatever.
Right.
He's quite good in this movie as well.
Yeah, he's crazy, and he's obviously this homeless guy, but he helps our heroes, and for his help, he is first killed, then collected by the military, turned into a zombie, and then had his body fucking obliterated.
Yeah, you really feel sorry for him, and also our lead girl in this movie. In the sort of final act, that was one of the weird things about this movie. The pace of this movie is a little awkward. I sort of thought it was ending at one point. We were getting to that, big crane shot pulling back and, end movie, and it fades to black, and we end up back in the military base.
Right.
I mean, it works in that regard. That final act makes it work,
right.
But it is sort of oddly edited or paced that way, where I thought I was ready to sort of get up and stretch my legs. Oh, and credits, no,
we're not quite done.
And there's more.
No, yeah.
So that is that weird thing for it. But they really kind of get screwed at the end, those people.
But our characters at least make the choice.
Yeah.
Our hero is bitten, so he's going to become like her, and he sees that she's so far gone that he's not going to be able to keep her sane very much longer.
Yeah.
So the two of them cremate
each other.
themselves.
Aww.
And they embrace as the flames in triumph, which is a romantic image, but would just be a fucking horrible way to die. Not
they should have
my
had
first
some
choice.
Bon Jovi playing over this. Going down in a blaze of glory. Anyways.
But it is kind of that funny. I feel the same way about Romeo and Juliet, the play, by the way. It was just like, I wonder if these two kids would have gone the distance.
No.
They spent their entire lives together, but their entire relationship was probably less than.
Oh, she would have totally broken his heart.
I really get the feeling she would have been.
He would have been the Millhouse of the zombie series by the end.
I don't know if it's a flaw in the performance or in the script, but I did get that vibe that she was, probably going to get bored with him and move on to some other adventure sooner or later. They went the distance because the finish line was a short step, I guess. Yeah. It's funny when it wants to be. I don't know it's exactly scary, but it's got these...
No, but it's entertaining.
It's got a few ouch moments.
Yeah.
More than any zombie I've ever seen, most zombie movie I've ever seen before, the sexuality angle is sort of played. It's weird because they very directly sort of marry the sex and the violence as she's, piercing her hands or cutting herself. She's reacting almost orgasmically.
Yeah.
And it's strange and unsettling, and yet I've watched it 3 or 4 times now.
So what are you saying there?
I don't know. Usually I say sex and zombies don't mix, but this movie accomplishes it. I mean... It maybe doesn't mix perfectly.
It had zombie sex and Dead Alive.
It didn't do it for me. Zombie Sex and Dead Alive, but that movie was just pure madness.
Yeah.
As a rule, when you're watching a zombie movie, you're not looking for
sex.
I don't typically find it, and when they try to force it in there, I find it rarely works. This movie, the love story kind of works.
It does.
The zombie story kind of works.
It does.
And the comedy kind of works.
It does.
So you're saying it's kind of worth watching.
Because it works.
All right, so we made it through another 6 zombie movies. My listeners have been really patient with my zombie fixation. I think of the last 5 episodes of Rank and Review, 4 of them have been zombie related.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a little break after this one from the zombies for a little while. But thanks for bearing with us. Lee, I gotta know, what was your least favorite of these 6 zombie movies and why?
So we're going from worst to first, all right?
That's typically how I like to do my business.
All at number 6. I don't think it should be a surprise when you've got vomiting zombies, when you've got zombies that can run upside down on roofs, when you've got Mina Savari as your lead, who's trying to be all tough and anyone who casts Nick Cannon should be slapped. I have Steve Miner's remake of Day of the Dead.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
I thought I was sick.
Yes, well, I'm also getting rid of a cold. But yes, the remake of Day of the Dead is at number 6 because really, it's just stinky. Yeah. It's stinky like the grade 7 shorts.
I am sympathetic to that point of view.
At number 5, we have the same jokes again in Return of the Living Dead. Once again, there's kind of no life. That bully kid in that zombie is also kind of annoying. I don't think we really touched on that a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
He's sort of just like... Ugh.
Not much of an actor. He's basically cast because he was a big, dumb, mean-looking kid.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that does not a performance make.
Yeah, no. And it's more of the same.
Yeah.
It's more of the same.
Agreed.
So, number 5 is Return of the Living Dead. And this is when we start getting better, because I kind of liked it. But Return of the Living Dead Part 3 had enough zaniness, and it had enough, love into it. Racial stereotypes aside, Chica.
Yeah.
I give Brian Yunza. I'm sorry for saying this wrong, Brian, if you're listening. Anyways, your Return of the Living Dead is kind of good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you it as number 3. 6, 5, 4. Sorry, dude. At number 3, and he should really make more movies, is Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead. It's good. I guess the elephant in the room on this is that it's pretty close to the source material, so we know what's going to happen. But it's really well made, really well acted. I like the changes in it. And they're subtle and also quite drastic. So, good on you there, Tom Savini, with your Night of the Living Dead. At number 2, we have Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. A really well-made action thriller without all the sort of social commentary about capitalism and how we're all slaves for money and, well, anyways.
Yeah.
We have Zack Snyder's well-made, well-acted Dawn of the Dead. This is how you do a remake, my friends. This is how you do a remake. But there's no way it could be number 1 because number 1 belongs to the best zombie comedy out there, and that is Return of the Living Dead.
So you put Return over Shaun of the Dead?
I'm
not necessarily.
I would say.
I'm just asking.
You know what? I'm gonna have to say yes.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love Shaun, but Return and both films make me giggle.
Okay.
Both films make me laugh pretty hard. I have great affection, I guess, for Return because I saw it as a kid. It made me laugh. It's long before Shaun, I guess, in that regard. This movie makes me smile from ear to ear the second this movie starts. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I love the sort of 80s punk aesthetic as well.
It does have shocking rewatchability. I don't seem to get tired of watching Return of the Living Dead.
No.
It seems to be a thing. It's funny, I really strongly suspected that we might go 6 for 6.
Oh, no.
This episode. I thought that we would.
Yeah.
And we only match in 2 places.
Really?
I know. The thing is that I'm completely sympathetic to where you end up. Like, I don't think we're going to be fighting over this particularly.
Really? I'm curious now.
But, well, let's wait another episode before I tell them. No, we'll do it now.
All right.
Since we're here and recording the podcast anyway, I wrote them down so I wouldn't cheat. I can understand you thinking that I would put the Day of the Dead remake in 6th position, especially the way I laid into it in there.
Yeah.
But here's my rationale for putting Return of the Living Dead Part 2 at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
Anything that they did in the movie to try and get laughs was ripped off from the movie before it.
Yeah.
And anything they added to the movie either added nothing or was stupid.
Yeah.
Now, the Day of the Dead remake, it's fast, it's got bad CGI, the characters are unbelievable. It's not a good movie.
Yeah.
But I think that it's moving fast enough, and at least, they made choices. Bub is a zombie vegetarian. That's incredibly stupid, but it's a choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is comparing shades of brown on shit here. So I'm not passionate about it, but that's where I put them. I put Part 2 at the bottom,
Okay.
and then the remake of Day of the Dead in 5th place.
Yeah.
Now we're more on common ground again, because in 4th position I put Return of the Living Dead Part 3.
Okay.
It's not amazing, but it's way better than it has any business being.
Yes.
And it's much closer to what I imagined or would hope a Return of the Living Dead movie would and should be.
Okay.
It comes closest to the sort of magic of the Dan O'Bannon.
Okay.
So that's where I'm in 3rd position, and I think we're agreeing again here.
Yeah.
Tom Savini's remake of Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Anything that didn't work in the movie for me, and nothing didn't work so strongly as to spoil it, was either right out of the script, which is just choices that maybe I wouldn't have made, but will live with, or the fact that, he had to cut his movie severely backwards. And a lot of movies, you cut the horror or the gross out of the violence out of it, and you've lost the bulk of the movie on the cutting room floor. I think it's a testament to how solid the script, the story, and the direction is that they gutted this movie, and it's still a good movie.
Yep.
And unfortunately, this is still back in the day when excised footage didn't get reprinted. A lot of times they would actually just be destroyed once they got it down to the print they wanted, which is just... It's too bad, because it would be interesting to see a director's cut of this movie. Now is the part where we get controversial.
I can't believe you're going this way.
I'm going to put Return of the Living Dead in 2nd place.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Why? Why do you do this to me? You did this last time. You're fired. You're no longer hosting this show. I know you created it. You're honestly going to sit there and tell me that the remake of Dawn of the Dead is better than Return.
They're very different movies.
Yeah?
What they have in common is that they're zombie movies.
Yeah.
And for me, I love a good zombie comedy.
Uh-huh.
But I prefer an exciting sort of thrill ride zombie movie. And I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead. I surprised myself because, like I said, he kind of took the brains out of it and somehow turned it into an effective roller coaster.
I almost want to hit pause and hit you and then press start again.
But it's not as overtly goofy as Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
I like that Return of the Living Dead is goofy, but there's enough realism, in quotation marks, in the Dawn of the Dead world for there to be some stakes. It's weird, because at the end of Return of the Living Dead, everybody dies, and you're smiling while the credits roll, right? Whereas at the end of Dawn of the Dead, everybody dies, and you're like, that kind of sucks.
I guess for one thing for me is, not that I think Return of the Living Dead is all that original. It's, it's aping from the original Night of the Living Dead story, but Dawn is just a flat out remake.
Yeah.
So I guess I just, right out of that there alone, you got to put Return just a little bit higher because of originality. Really?
I will refer you back to our previous episode when we both sang the praises of Dawn of the Dead, the original.
Yeah.
I would not and could not have anticipated the remake working as effectively for me as it did. Like I said, if the whole movie had kept the momentum of that first 10 minutes, I'd be sitting here telling you this was a better movie than the original. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the opening came that close. And I took the ride with the movie, and I really enjoyed it. I think it could have been 10 to 15% smarter than it was, but I think it did a good job of being an exciting zombie movie, and it's a big reason that the zombie renaissance sort of happened for us. And I'm a fan. It's not an easy thing. I didn't just say, yes, Dawn of the Dead, and I have nothing but love for Return of the Living Dead. I think if you listen to my previous zombie episode, you will find that to be the case.
Well, Larry, it's finally happened. I think
it's over. The friendship is done.
You've lost your mind. How? No, well, you explained how.
Well, I guess I love zombie comedies, but I prefer, not zombie comedies. Maybe is what it comes down to. But I love both of these movies, and it's close.
It's like we're fighting over, the two really cool sports cars. Which one's the better? They're both awesome.
But that's where we're disagreeing. What's the worst of this, and what's the best of this, really? But we more or less agree.
What would be wrong with? I can count some of the bad choices and errors in Dawn where I can't really nitpick Return.
Really? Well, like I say, I'm made a little bit uncomfortable by the graveyard nude scene. I know you find it very fappable. I think that there's some creak and groan to the performances here and there, especially with the younger kids. But that's sort of part of the horror aesthetic. I just take it on the chin. I love it. Like, I do love the movie.
Yeah, I think people will remember...
It's just more of a cartoon somehow.
I think people will remember Return of the Living Dead a lot more than Dawn of the Dead will ever be. I think people will have...
That's probably true. But that doesn't mean I like it more or less than the other. And it's arbitrary. I mean, some idiot named Larry Parsons said that you have to rank your movies from the top to the bottom.
And I agree. You're just wrong.
Well, I think I'm just going to ask you to live with it today. Just live with it, brother. All right. Lee is licking his wounds. He's still mad at me, I can tell.
There's no wounds, man. You're just getting the stink eye.
You didn't see it coming.
You're just wrong. You're just wrong.
You're not more mad that Day of the Dead is worse than Return of the Living Dead 2, you think?
No, I'm not mad about that. I just think that your instincts are wrong on this.
It's a matter of tiny degrees, but we need to get past it, brother.
I don't know.
We need to get past it.
I'm a bitter person. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
There's 2 Jerrys that we're going to give out. We have the best kill, and we have best zombie effect. Do you have a preference which Jerry Award you would like to give out first, sir?
Why don't we do best zombie effect?
Best zombie effect. Okay, nominations include Ving Rhames eating his own eyeball in the highly questionable remake of Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
The half zombie that is interrogated in Return of the Living Dead.
Yo.
She's just a beautiful design and beautiful execution. I'm a big fan. The zombie holding the doll in Night of the Living Dead that Patricia Tallman gets quite upset by and ends up executing. You mentioned the one-armed zombie.
It's in the director's cut.
The extended edition of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Who comes charging at the door when they first arrive at the mall.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to mention from Dawn, both the pregnant woman and the result of her pregnancy.
Zombie baby.
I actually think that the pregnancy itself is quite disturbing. Like, once she turns pregnant.
Yeah, it is a disturbing scene.
The whole thing, the whole progression of it, you know this is going nowhere good.
Yep.
So those are the nominations for best zombie effects. I certainly know where I would vote. But,
and the winner is Interrogation Zombie from Return of the Living Dead.
I agree.
See, that's another reason why Return is better than Dawn.
There's just not a lot of competition as far as that effect.
Such a well-executed scene,
I
great
would agree
puppeteering.
with you that there's no better looking zombie in the remake of Dawn of the Dead than that zombie in Return. I'm not fighting you there at all.
Yep.
So nominations for best kill. Tom and Jenny in the remake of Night of the Living Dead getting themselves exploded in a high-pressure situation in the remake of Night. Yeah. The first punk who's getting eaten by the tar zombie is kind of set up as sort of like the muscle of the group, so necessarily he has to be removed from the menu as early as possible. It's good death. We have listed here the many deaths of Riverman. This poor put-upon character who's just tries to do something nice, gets killed for it, then gets resurrected and brutally tortured.
Yep.
Good times.
He earns his paycheck out, that's all I'm saying.
The truck backing up to the bay doors in the remake of Dawn of the Dead was just leaving those horrible blood smears on the back of the truck as it plows through the zombies.
Yeah.
Nasty. And also from the remake of Dawn of the Dead, the accidental chainsaw kill when they're trying to escape. There's another death here. Can I just really quickly add a death that's not included on your list?
Sure.
one of the punks. Actually, he's the only actor to appear, however briefly, in all three of these Return of the Living Dead movies.
Yeah.
But the scene where they actually get the half-zombie to interrogate, he gets pulled out by her and bitten. And as they're pulling him back in, this fucking fountain of blood spewing out of his head, and this zombie's attached to him, eating his brain.
That's good scene.
And I always they way like cartooned the amount of blood, but it was also somehow perfect.
Yeah.
I've always liked that, so I'm going to throw that in as a last-ditch nomination. But you are my guest, so you get to lay down the law.
I love me some Tar Zombie. Tar Zombie was awesome, and the first time I saw that, and I turned around, I was like, more brains! I laughed my little pubescent ass off.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to say Tar Zombie eating that punk was awesome.
And I do think part of the reason that I love Return of the Living Dead generally is when I first saw it as a kid, I didn't really appreciate the humor in it.
Yeah.
I actually was quite scared of it.
Yes.
And as I came to it later and grow up, I'd actually, wow, not only is this movie awesome, but it's also kind of funny too.
So, if you were to do this, I mean, I know you get the guest chooses, which would you do best kill?
For best kill?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess I've got that late nomination stuck in my head now.
That's Return of the Living Dead, right?
Return of the Living Dead.
See, once again, why Return is so much better.
It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think everybody who likes zombies even a little bit should watch it.
You're going to wake up tomorrow and realize how wrong you were.
I'm going to sit bolt upright in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
We have to record again.
Yep.
I was just wrong.
Yep.
Well, maybe you're right. Because, confession...
Yeah.
Way back in time, back in the histories of Rank and Review, back while the Earth was still cooling, you and I did an episode called You So Crazy Director Masterclass.
Yes.
And I think if I had it to do it over again, Shutter Island should have probably taken second place to Fight Club.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Shutter Island was fresher to me. It was a newer movie to me. And I do have problems with Fight Club. It's a very impressive movie, but... But that's one where I definitely, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
This one it was tough, but I made my decision. There it is.
I think, once again, over time, you're going to sit back and realize that it was an error in judgment.
It's the second time it's taken second place, too.
Yeah, see.
Last time it lost to the original Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But, I don't know. I'm speechless. Which, I'm yet still talking. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I am speechless, and shall remain so. All right. I promise we're going to take a little breather from the zombies for a while, but that wraps up the first two installments of the Dead Rank and Reviews. Very Romero-obsessed last couple of episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any feedback to send, please do so at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Please seek out the show on Facebook, seek it out on iTunes, and just tell that other film freak in your life that this podcast called Rank and Review exists and that it's waiting for them. Until next episode, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. This is your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, saying, until next time.